He trusted God when what God told him didn't seem to make sense from a military standpoint. And that kind of applies to us today. We're told to trust God, even if things don't quite make sense to us. We look around in the world today and we see things going on that just absolutely, why? What's happening here? This doesn't make sense. But if we trust God, we know that He will work everything out. So Joshua tells the priests, and this is the instructions that God has given him. He tells the priests, take up the ark, have the priests go before the ark, have 7 priests going before the ark, blowing trumpets. And he's to have soldiers going before the priests, blowing trumpets in the ark. And he is to have soldiers going before the ark and soldiers following after the ark. Now, I don't know exactly how many there were. We know there were 600,000 soldiers available. And we have a mound that's 7 acres. And 600,000 soldiers would be a lot of people to have surrounding 7 acres. But we're never told exactly how many there were. He says to the people, the soldiers and the priests, circle the city one time. No one is supposed to speak. And after you've gone around that city one time, go back to camp. Okay? The next day, they did the same thing. Soldiers before the ark, priests blowing trumpets, the ark, and soldiers behind the ark. And they did this again. This went on for 6 days. And I had to wonder, what are the people in the city thinking about this about now? They're looking out there. This ain't supposed to be happening. They're probably looking up there, looking at all these people walking around, blowing trumpets and thinking, they ain't got all their marbles. But on the 7th day, they circled the city 7 times. When they had circled 7 times, the priests blew the trumpets. Joshua said, shout, for the Lord has given you this city. Verse 17, he reminds them of something. This is in chapter 6. Then it reads, now the city shall be doomed by the Lord to destruction, it and all who are in it. Only Rahab the harlot shall live, she and all who are with her in the house, because she hid the messengers that we sent. And you, verse 18, by all means abstain from the accursed things, lest you become accursed when you take of the accursed things, and make the camp of Israel a curse and trouble it. But all the silver and gold and vessels of bronze and iron are consecrated to the Lord. They shall come into the treasury of the Lord. That's Joshua's reminder. He's already told them these things. He's reminding them again. Now, I want you to remember that, because somebody did not. The people shouted, the walls fell, and the men went straight up into the city. Men, women, children, livestock were slain. Joshua told the spies to rescue Rahab and her family and place them outside the camp. We know that Rahab's story does not end here. Rahab married a man named Salmon, who's the son of Nahshon and the prince of Judah. They begat Boaz. Boaz married Ruth and begat Obed. Obed begat Jesse, and Jesse begat David, the future king of Israel. Rahab and Ruth are in the direct line of descendants to Jesus. Back to the narrative. The city was burned to the ground. Everything was destroyed. They took all these precious metals and put them in the treasury of the Lord. At the end of the chapter, Joshua announces a curse upon whoever rebuilds this city, will lay the foundation with the death of his firstborn, and will erect the gates with the death of his youngest. We know this was fulfilled in the days of King Ahab in 1 Kings, the 16th chapter. Everything in Jericho was to be burned or put into the treasury of the Lord, and the people were to be utterly destroyed, every one of them. The animals, utterly destroyed. Anything that could be burned was to be burned. Anything that went into the treasury of the Lord, the precious minerals, gold, silver, that was taken and put into the treasury. There's a lot to learn about this story, even at this point. God could have destroyed Jericho without Israel's help. Why does God even want Israel to do these things?
Prepare them, I think, for. I mean, they got more work to do. This may not be true what I'm about to say. I studied it one time. It seemed like as they conquer the central part of the land, and I think if I remember correctly, move south, I may be wrong on that. But it seems like as this goes on, they do more of the involved, things, the miracles seem to go down a little bit, to say it that way.
And you make a good point there. Go ahead.
I was just like, it always seems like God gives us a part or something. He can do it all, but He gives us, even today, He gives us a part, things that we're to do. And the way that He laid this out, there was no misunderstandings. The directions were clear. And so I think one of the elements that God wanted them to get was listen to what I tell you and do it the way I tell you to do it. Because, like you pointed out, the way that they captured the city made no sense. You could have, anybody who was a military person would have said, there's no connection here. This doesn't work. You got to go, all the humanistic ways. No, God is the difference. And that's what we need to learn. Even today, we need to learn that lesson. Listen to God, do it His way. But we do have a part that He expects us to do.
And you both made an excellent point. God wanted His people involved. God wants us today involved in His work.
Perhaps there's still an element of mercy for these people. I think they were scared to death. To see this happening for 6 days, I don't think calmed them. He's talking about this is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm thinking they're looking out with this fear already, and this is going on. But they don't change. We know Rahab did. She had the heart. It changed. She reacted to her fear in the right way, in a good way.
Yes. And everybody in the land had an opportunity.
That's what I'm saying. Not just what was inside the city, but there was this fear had that.
Yeah, we'll read in a few verses the story. This story spread throughout the land. Everybody knows who the God of Israel is.
So, you know, God's in some way perhaps showing a little mercy to these people if they went to. Of course, he knows the end of the story.
Yeah, it's not like he's just going to go in and fire and brimstone the whole area. Or then the children of Israel just walk in. He's giving people a chance. I appreciate yeah, Wes, you got something?
No, just doesn't it remind you of Hebrews 11? You know that he says in verse 30, by faith the walls of Jericho fell down.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was a miracle,
Oh yeah.
but as you're pointing out, the faith of these people was tested. It was an opportunity to show their faith in God's plan against maybe all conventional wisdom. And that's what we've said. And then verse 31, by faith Rahab the harlot perished not with them that believed not. Now, they were afraid of God. But I think in the sense the Hebrew writers say, they really didn't believe him enough to serve him. They were afraid of him, no doubt. But Rahab had the wisdom not just to see, well, God's going to win, but I want to be with him. And it'd been great if the whole city would have turned out like that, but that was not going to be.
No, and doesn't that apply to us today? Oh, a lot of people say, yeah, I believe in God. Yeah, Jesus was the Son of Christ. Jesus was the Son of God. But do they have enough faith to obey him? That's really the point. We also see in these passages terms like devoted things and accursed things. The term devoted, I think, had two basic ideas. It involved annihilation, for one, and sacrifice. And there may be a technical difference, say, between things like that are accursed and things that are devoted. Would we look at accursed things? What would accursed things be? What was the biggest problem in the land of Canaan? Idols. Idol worship, false gods. And then there are things that are devoted. We could say devoted meant annihilation of these accursed things. There are also things that are devoted to God. Certainly the precious minerals and gold and silver and all that stuff that went into the treasury was devoted to God. There's something missing here when they get through with taking this city. What do you suppose that is? After everything is done, they've burned everything, they've taken the precious minerals and goods and what have you and put them in the treasury. Something seems to be missing as we move. Huh? No.
200 shekels of silver were missing.
Well, okay. Aside from what Achan did, what I thought of was that we don't see where they gave God the glory. God did this. They didn't do it. God destroyed Jericho. God gave them the city of Jericho. And I don't see where God is given the glory there. Now, that's not mentioned in the text, so maybe take that with a grain of salt. But we move.
For Achan, nobody else violated God's instructions.
No,
They
not
would have been tempted.
no.
Just like Achan was, so I think that shows the reverence that they had.
Maybe that's a good point. That they did, by doing what God told them to do, they were giving God the glory. I just didn't see it mentioned any place. But as we move on into the 7th chapter, we find out something that was unknown to anybody other than Achan and, of course, God. He'd taken something from Jericho which had been devoted to God. And God's anger was kindled against Israel. So at a later point, Joshua sends spies to the city of Ai. Something else that I might note at this point, Israel does not consult God immediately as Joshua is sending the spies to Ai. Joshua talked to God before they went to Jericho, and God told him exactly what to do. But I don't see anything in the narrative that says that Joshua spoke with God before they went to Ai. So he sends the spies. And they come back saying, well, we don't need all the men to take Ai. Maybe 2,000 or 3,000. That would have been a good time to inquire of the Lord. Anyway, as the narrative continues, Israel is routed. 36 Israelites are killed. People's hearts melt. Joshua tears his garments and he falls before the altar until the evening. So now he's before God. The next thing he says is a little puzzling to me. He says, God, why did you bring us here to fall before our enemies? Is this a little reminiscent to you as it was to me about Exodus the 13th chapter, when the people were saying, why did you bring us out into this wilderness to die? Or Numbers, the 21st chapter, as they were traveling onto the land. Why did you bring us out here into this desert to die, to fall before our enemies? Well, God hears all this. What does he say next? Get up. What are you doing there lying on your face? Israel has sinned. They have broken my commandment. They've taken the accursed things. They have deceived by hiding the devoted things among their own stuff. They have stolen from me. In Malachi, the 3rd chapter. Let me pull her over there just real quick. The 3rd chapter and verse 8. Will a man rob God? Yet you have robbed me. But you say, in what way have we robbed you? In tithes and offerings. Failure to honor God by not giving him what is his is regarded as robbing God. Achan robbed God. This was just one man, but all of Israel is accursed at this point. Israel flees before its enemies because they, that is Israel, is accursed, he says, God says. And I will not be among you until the accursed is destroyed from among you. So what's the solution going to be here?
Find the accursed and destroy it.
Find the accursed and destroy it. And God tells them exactly how they're going to do it. Beginning in verse 13, he says, "Up, sanctify the people and say, sanctify yourselves against tomorrow. For thus says the Lord God of Israel, thou canst not stand before thine enemies until you take away the accursed thing from among you. In the morning, therefore, you shall be brought before according to your tribes, and it shall be that the tribe which the Lord taketh shall come according to the families thereof, and the family which the Lord shall take shall come by households, and the household which the Lord shall take shall come man by man. And it shall be that when he that is taken with the accursed thing shall be burned with fire, he and all that he hath, because he hath transgressed the covenant of the Lord, because he hath wrought folly in Israel." He has transgressed the covenant of the Lord. Yes, sir. Marcus.
You know, back at the beginning of Exodus, when he first gave them the law, God spent a good bit of time talking about how to make things consecrated to him, things that by their, by their presence, they made other things holy, things like the altar and other things that were consecrated, so that things would probably be holy. And here we have the exact opposite. You have something that is defiles the people that's been taken in. And so the things that it's touched, not just the thing itself and not just the person that took it, but all he has is defiled and must be removed.
Do you suppose there was...
God telling you, look, just the act of doing these things, violating my commandment, defiles you and everything you come into contact with.
You think it's possible that someone in Achan's family knew what was going on? Okay, yes, sir.
That may be part of what's puzzling me a little bit, about, you go back to the first verse of the chapter, the first section right there about, we look at it and say, all right, nobody really knew about it except Achan and God, so why is God so mad at everybody else? I'm a little bit puzzled. I'm not thinking if somebody in here has got some thoughts on it, I'd like to hear about that. I mean, it's just, I just, it's, and I'm sitting here thinking about maybe it had something to do with these people should have known better, should have been more aware of what was going on with their kinfolk and stuff like that. But then again, he goes through the process of having them come before him, and nobody sort of steps up to that point and says, there he is right there.
Yeah.
Well,
And Achan himself could have
well, I see him like
fessed up before any of this took place. I remember, and I cannot tell you exactly where we read it. It was I think in the speeches of Moses. It says if anyone is going into this land thinking that, well, he's just pretending to go along here and he's going to do something else, then the whole land would be destroyed, and subsequently Israel itself would be destroyed from the land. That's one possibility. Does anybody else have a comment or a question about? Yes.
I don't know any more than the text and what you guys know. I do think that you make a good point that it's not unreasonable to think there was some family culpability here. And so, God seems to make distinctions at times anyway. It reminds you a little bit of another great crisis when, Korah, Dathan, and Abiram opposed Moses.
Mm-hmm.
And, they were swallowed up. But not the sons of Korah. The sons of Korah, we read about them, having a part in. So, God made a distinction there. He doesn't give us all the details. I can only assume that maybe everybody wasn't going along with it. So just knowing, as we all do, the nature of God, I think, God is not unfair, and we know that. And so I'm sure if we knew more detail, we'd be able to understand more about it. But at least that comes to mind, that God punished the families of Dathan and Abiram, and Korah, but spared the family of Korah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, we know that because we read the Psalms. We find Psalms that were penned by the children or the family of Korah. So we see Joshua up early in the morning as the Lord commanded. And the tribes were brought by. The tribe of Judah was taken. Then came the clan of Zerah, and Zabdi was chosen. And among his descendants, a man named Achan, who was the son of Carmi, was chosen. So Achan's busted now. God has pointed him out. Joshua said to Achan, "My son, I beg you, give glory to God and make confession to him. Tell me now what you have done. Do not hide it from me." Achan answered, "It is true. I have sinned against Jehovah, the God of Israel, and this is what I have done. When I saw among the spoil the beautiful Babylonian cape, 200 shekels of silver, and a wedge of gold, 50 shekels weight, I wanted them so badly I couldn't resist. So I took them and buried them in the floor of my tent." Yes.
There's a note in here, and I think it's kind of funny. It says basically the value of the things that Achan took are about what the lifetime earnings of an average worker of the day would be. So he literally took an amount of money that was worth his entire life and would lose
His life.
his life for it.
Mm-hmm. It's a good point. I'd like you to look with me for just a minute. Genesis, the 3rd chapter. This, of course, you remember this is where Eve has her encounter with the serpent concerning the fruit of the tree of knowing good and evil. Verse 6. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree desirable to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. The three elements, fairly consistent elements of sin. She saw, she coveted, she took. Same thing happened here with Achan. I think the same sentiment is spoken to us in 1 John, and I didn't mark it in here, so I'm going to have to thumb through and find it, the book of 1 John, and it's the 2nd chapter. Oop, went past it. And verse 16. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life is not of the Father, but is of the world. So he saw it, he desired it, and he took it. Joshua sent messengers. He ran to Achan's tent, found the loot as he described, and brought the things back and laid them down before the Lord in all the sight of Israel. And then Joshua and all Israel took Achan with the silver and the cape and the wedge of gold and his daughters and his oxen and his donkeys and his sheep and his tent and all that he had to a nearby valley. Joshua said, "Why have you brought trouble upon us? The Lord will bring trouble upon you this very day." And all Israel stoned them with stones and burned them with fire. And they raised a great heap of stones over Achan, and the wrath of God was satisfied. This valley was called Achor, which means troubling from that day forward. Do you get from the text that every member of Achan's family was killed, stoned? A terrible price to pay for one man's sin. Any comments or questions or anything you'd like to say about that particular section? We are at the closing time, but if I don't have anything, we'll quit for today and we'll continue at this point Sunday. Thank you so much for your attention and your comments.